I'm Joyce Kistner, and this is my cabin, the Duncan cabin from Washington County. It was moved to this site on Lee Highway and put together by marking each of the 41 logs with a tag that told where it went, how it fit over the other logs, and it was put back for preservation purposes, just as it was built, except in cases where my husband thought that we should update, like the foundation, which was sitting on two large rocks. Now it's built on concrete, cinder block, and bar joist, and that way the logs are off of the ground and they will not deteriorate nearly as quickly if they're in a protective foundation. The Duncans lived in this house in the early 1900s and before that too. It was built in 1790 to 1820. There's not an exact way to know when buildings were actually built then or where they were, because those people went from one tree to another. They had it measured out, and they'd say to the right 50 feet to a locust tree, but the property lines are what changed. We know exactly this cabin was near Logan Creek. They used that creek. Miss Vince Wilson, who was a minister who lived there with his 10 children, baptized his congregation in the creek at the foot of the hill from this cabin. The chimney was brought from another house on the same property, and because the original chimney was slate and it was falling apart in 1991 or 2 when we built it. So they rescued a chimney from another house so it would last and be stable for the use of the family in the cabin. The chinking is not, I have some chinking in the cabin I'll show you, but you can see the chinking in between the logs, and it's actually colored concrete, because if it was chinking, insects could dig holes in it and go into the house, which it wouldn't last very long, and you'd have to continue to repair the cabin. So we haven't had any trouble with that. The logs are put together with a V-notch. One log fit over the other one, which was one of the earliest notches that they have in cabin building. And this cabin in Southwest Virginia and East Tennessee, Scandinavians and people from Russia came to our part of the South and built houses like this in one day. They could build this 17 by 19 cabin in one day, but usually they had to have another room on the back to make it big enough for all the things family have to do, necessities like food and sleeping, and they had to do extra things, add to the cabin. But today we're only talking about this original cabin. This could have been a bathtub that's leaning up against the cabin, a possibility. On the other side of the chimney is a long hole. It's covered up with a piece of wood, and that's where in rain, snow, sleet, or whatever was going on, they could just move the wood and bring the logs in for the fireplace, and it would keep them out of bad weather outside. We just moved from the tree over there to the front porch of Hannah's house, and here we have an apple peeler. The juice and all from the apples came down here. The mother could use that however she liked with the children. This is like a washing machine, early 1900, that people used. It has ringers on it. This is an art picture at the very beginning of when we started building this cabin. of it being put together, and there's a scaffold there and the fireplace, and just to give us a remembrance of what we did. Over here we have a cherry picker, a cherry seeder rather, where the cherries were put in here and then the seeds were mashed out of them to the bottom, and then it could be used for pies or for a cherry drink or whatever. The children in this family, of course, did a lot of hunting, and this is a rabbit skin hat that they could have worn out in the woods. The gun is over the doorway. Of course, their guns wouldn't have looked like that, but we didn't want to get into guns. This cabin has 3 windows. Ours has glass in it. The original cabin in the 1800s probably had wood boards over it to keep out animals or the cold or to cool it off in the summer. So one window's upstairs, 2 is downstairs. This is the original door of the cabin. It had never had a lock on it. It just had leather strings that some way they tied to try to make it safer than it was. And we did that by reinforcing the back of it with another piece of wood. And that's on this door. It only has 2 doors, this one and the one that goes out the back to where the kitchen would have been. But it's a very strong door, and that's something they realized then that was very necessary. Now we're inside the Duncan cabin, and it looks like this is a 1-floor cabin, but it's 1.5. A larder or the attic is where the 8 or 9 children slept upstairs. This is a stairwell that's built like it is at Monticello, except this is wood out of the forest and not fancy like that. But it's a curved stairwell. You have to watch your head, not much room to go up there. But that's where the children slept on straw and hay on the floor with a quilt. And they would probably go to bed pretty early because they had no lights, electricity, unless they just went outside. But they probably had times that they had to be a certain place. Over here, and this is the kind of lighting they had, the lamps. This is a toaster. You just put a little fire inside and put your bread around. It's made out of tin. A lot of things in those days were made out of tin. And of course these diagraphs of pictures, some from the Confederacy, some family, make very interesting pictures historically. A bonnet that a lady that lived many years ago might have worn during this time, 18th century. That's an authentic, over 100-year-old hat. Here we have some of the boys went hunting and found a fox, and their daddy cleaned it, and of course it made food for the family, and then they made it into a beautiful hanging skin to go at the fireplace. We have a raccoon over there, the head of one, and then the whole raccoon. Over the fireplace is President Lincoln, who was president during this, close to this period, 1861 to 65, and he was studied in a log cabin. You see the little tin log cabin there in front of him, and there he is reading his books in the little picture at the fireplace, and that's his cabinet in Washington, D.C. that helped him make decisions during the war. We have many utensils here that the mother would cook in and take her food through the back door. It's very heavy, And when you put a fire in this fireplace, you have to open doors and windows. It is so hot. So those people, our pioneer heritage, really had a hard time living in those kinds of conditions. This is a shepherd's purse that he carried it when he was out with the sheep, the raccoons. Over here is another cabin. The clothesline there would be upstairs where the children slept. We have herbs. They hung some of their clothes there. And this is the gown. It's a Muslim gown, a particular style of gown most women wore in those days. Eunice was in charge of the water. You see the bucket down here. She had to go to Logan Creek every night with this bucket in her gown to get fresh water from the spring house. This little chest here it's a washstand. It's where the children would come and wash their hands to get ready for dinner, go back through this door, and that's the Octagon soap, which you've probably never heard of. It was very bad for your skin. It was made out of animal oil of some kind, and it did not have a good odor to it, but I guess that's all they had to kind of clean up to go eat their dinner. And there's a mirror, authentic 18th century mirror, and candles. Here we have the American flag. We have a quilt that is called the log cabin quilt. You can see the circles of different colors, which stands for the logs in the log house. That's over 100 years old. The dishes and the cabinet, it's questionable if they would have had that in a cabin. Some people might have. The unique thing about it, it was made out of a piece of tree. Each side is a full solid wood out of the side of a tree, both sides, and then dishes of that early 1900. But it's doubtful that many cabins had a piece of furniture like that in it. Here is a little trunk. Mary, one of the children, was going to visit her grandmother, and you can see what she packed to take in her little chest trunk. It's an oval top trunk, and she's got a little lamp. She has her nightgown, her corncob doll, her little hat, and this would be closed up, a drinking cup that's tin, and put in the back of a horse and wagon, a big wagon. This would go in the back of the wagon, and the horses would pull her to her grandmother's house for a visit, or maybe to help her grandmother do something, just as a visit. This is a tobacco box that the men would have used if they were interested. Here we have little leather children's shoes. These are books. Since this man was a minister, I'm sure he had books in his house to study with. I believe his Bible is over there. This is a citywide award that the cabin that was presented to us by the Preservation Organization in Bristol in about 2023, and we're very proud of that, and that we were able to stick to most of the rules and guidelines for preserving an old building. This is a lady's cap, a fancy cap she might have worn to church. Maybe a little bit later than 1820s, or it could be 1820s. It says 1700s is what it's marked, but it's a beautiful handmade hat or bonnet that the ladies would wear. And over there is a candle mold where they had to make candles, you know, to burn in the cabin because that was the main light of the cabin. If the mother wanted to make clothing for the children, she has a spinning wheel and this yarn spinner that she would use. This was the minister's Bible that he used when he went down to Hyder's Gap, Saltville, Virginia, Plaster Cove. He was a busy person and he had to walk down there, and which took 6 hours, and then 6 hours back late at night. In the center of the room is a small table that could have been here. This bread bowl is over 100 years old. It was used every day, and the bottom was out of it when we bought it. But this has been many years ago. We had the bottom reinserted, and it's back to its original form, and I just put some of the vegetables in it that the children could have grown out in their garden. Apples, corn, grapes, just different things like we have today. And then I'm going to close with this poem that's called My Little Log House on Logan Creek. My little log house on Logan Creek could tell us some tales if only it could speak. 80 in the genesis of our land, we vowed to protect and increase its span, to think of our heritage and the foundation of our sphere. People came to worship God out of love, not of fear. Sitting high on a hill at Lindale in a cove, through all kinds of weather, hail, wind, and snow. The cabin on its own where all can see who pass, our ancestral heritage, a view and remembrance that last. A pioneer house for families and their way of life, with its massive cinder block foundation, chinking, weathered wood and steel. The notch, huge rafters, and massive logs free from the fields. My little log house from Logan Creek could tell us some tales if only it could speak. Pioneers working, toiling from daylight to dark, cooking on the fireplace, cornbread and mush, rounding up cows so they could be milked, rocking the baby with a cradle tilt, spinning the flax on the gossip wheel, tending the garden and drying the herbs, mending wool stockings and weaving a skirt, hunting in the forest for deer and bird, getting traps set for raccoons and hunting quail, then sitting by the fire, drinking ale. The birth of a baby on a cold winter's night, the love of it would bring the hearts it would warm, with Granny's lye soap, grainy and greasy, would clean your clothes and leave you wheezy. My little log house from Logan Creek could tell us some tales if only it could speak.